Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Melanie Kenny from Kenny Collection, and today we'll be putting together our 3D printed coffin. Huge thanks to Ashley Lee at Craft Crate for helping me make this happen. I'm so excited to share this with you guys, and I hope you love it. So the first part of this tutorial will be making the chain, and here is what the example one that I made looks like. There's the larger circular jump ring in the middle, and then all of the other bits of the chain going off of it with eye hooks in 7 different areas screwed into the print. Here I'll be using a jewelry drill, and this was my first time using it. It worked out really well. I loved it, so I definitely recommend. I am drilling the holes into the same spots that I did on the first one, but you can totally choose where you want your holes to be, or even if you want to add the web at all. Now that all the holes are made, I will be screwing an eye hook into each one. As you can see on this print, I spray painted it and added some real spider webs on it because I kind of wanted to see what that looked like. I didn't do that on the tutorial because I wanted to leave this open for creativity. So I would love to see what you guys come up with, whether it be rhinestones, glitter, different paints, whatever. I'm excited. Show me, please. This concept for 3D printing something for tumblers to go in was an idea that I started a while ago, and I'm super excited to share this with you guys. And here it is. So you'll grab that circular jump ring as well as one of the smaller jump rings, open up the small one, loop it through the circular one, and then add the end of the chain in there as well. So then we're going to measure the distance that we want the center to be away from whichever first eye hook you pick. In this case, I am doing the top left. I opened up another small jump ring, looped it through the chain, and then looped that through the eye hook. And there's the first one. So now you'll just grab one of the small jump rings, loop it through that same circle, loop it through the chain, and close it up. And then you'll measure the chain to the distance of the eye hook that's diagonal from whichever one you made. I ended up liking the distance that I made to the first one better for the bottom, so I just switched that over. So we're just doing the direct opposite right now. And looping that, so there we go, we have one straight across. Then you'll just continue connecting the chain from the center jump ring to each of the eye hooks. To make it easier to clean, if you wanted to remove the chain, you can add lobster clasps to the end of the chain where it connects to the eye hook. So then you just take the lobster clasps off instead of having to unloop the jump ring from the eye hook. And always make sure that when you're measuring from the center to the eye hook that you stand the tumbler up, just because that'll be the position that it's in most often and you want to see how it hangs. Here is the finished first part of the chain, so now we'll be making the first circle around the center ring. And here's how the center ring with the chain should look like when you're done. Open up a small jump ring, add the chain onto it, and then loop it through one of the chains that's coming off of the center. You can choose however much distance that you want it to be from the center. This is just where I put it. Then you'll close up that jump ring, open up another one, add it to the chain, and then hook that onto the main chain that's next to the first one that you just put the jump ring on. Here's what that looks like, and then we'll just be continuing on with that longer chain and adding it to the next segment of the main chains. And there we are. So then you'll just keep doing this, connecting all of the 7 chains in a loop all the way around. So here it gets exciting because you can see it start coming together. Here is the first loop, and then you'll just go ahead and do another loop around that. You can do as many or as little as you want. I did 2 full loops and then some smaller segments here and there. And here are the lobster clasps that I mentioned before. You just add them right to the end of the jump ring so that they'd hook onto the eye hook. This is the end result of adding that second loop and a few scattered segments. Now you'll have to remove the chain, so get some painter's tape and lightly press it onto the chain. Take off all of the jump rings that are attached to the eye hooks. Make sure to close them up because you don't want to lose them. And then carefully remove the chain with the tape. And yes, this is where I realized that I should have used lobster clasps and that word is surprisingly hard to say. This comes off very nicely. Just store it in a spot where the tape won't get stuck to anything else. Now on to the epoxy sculpt. You will want to mix this in a smaller portion than what you think you'll need. I mixed only this much, and honestly I had some leftovers and my spider came out a little big. Once you have it fully mixed, go ahead and play around with the portions just to see how big that you want your head to be. This was the extra bit that I ended up removing, and like I said, the spider still came out large, so with such a small container that you guys have, mix less because you will definitely need less. Once you figure out how large you want your head, just go ahead and grab a toothpick and then measure how high you want the first segment of the legs to be. Cut the toothpick at that length and then cut 7 more. I recommend snipping these against something else, and please watch your eyes because the toothpicks will fly away. Roll your head into an egg shape and then cut off one last little bit of toothpick, stick it onto the head, and then stick the body onto the other end of the toothpick. Then you'll take those other 8 toothpick ends that you cut off and stick them right into the head area. 4 on one side and 4 on the other. This process is a lot easier if your epoxy has firmed up a bit, so I recommend leaving it for about like 40 minutes to an hour. Just make sure to check on it, see if that it hasn't firmed up too much, but you definitely want it a bit firmer than when you freshly mix it. Now that you have a cute base for your spider, you'll just leave this sitting until it fully cures. Once it's fully cured, you'll need your hot glue gun, some more toothpicks, epoxy sculpt, and your snippers again. We'll be making 2 more segments for the legs. These are how big I made the ones for mine, and I'm just going to cut 7 more of these sizes. When you have all your leg segments, grab your hot glue gun and put a little tiny drop on the edge of the bottom of the tumbler and stick your spider right on that. I place mine with his head pointing up a little bit so that there's enough room for his front legs to reach the tumbler. Grab one of the longer pieces that you cut off for the leg segments, put a teeny tiny little bit of hot glue on it, and then hold it against one of the first segments of the legs, making sure to keep it above the tumbler to allow room for the smaller segment on the bottom. And you'll just keep adding these segments with the hot glue for all the other 7 legs. Now, I know it might be tempting to just leave the legs like this because they do look really skinny and cute, but for durability purposes, I'm going to show you adding epoxy sculpt over them. Make sure you have water available and go ahead and mix your epoxy sculpt. Unlike what I did here, you will only need to mix a teeny tiny little bit of epoxy sculpt. You will need a lot less than you think you do. This turned out to be way too much, so use it sparingly. It's also best to only do a few legs at a time, so do some legs here and there, let that cure, and then do the rest of the legs. Start by rolling a little bit of epoxy and then pinch it between your fingers to flatten it out, and then you'll just wrap that around one of your legs and smooth it all out. This is where your water comes in handy. Make sure that your fingers are a little wet at all times so that the epoxy doesn't get super sticky on your fingers and, get disfigured. It also helps to dip your tools in the water before you smooth out the epoxy on the leg, just so that they don't stick to it either, but make sure that it's not too wet, otherwise the hot glue will come off of the toothpicks. Ask me how I know. After smoothing out that base, I'm just pinching the rest of the epoxy around the toothpicks and hot glue. There's the first leg. It's looking really good. So then I'll show you me doing the second leg on the other side, and then you'll just do the same thing with all the other legs, making sure to let a few of them cure in between and then working on the rest. Here's what it looks like when it's all covered in epoxy. Then I just spray painted it. Looks really cute. And I'm using Grand Finale for the finishing product. This is by Crystalac. If you're using epoxy, you'll do the same thing. Just spread the epoxy all along the inside. In this case, I'm spreading the Grand Finale on the inside and just swirling it around so it gets into all those grooves. And then twisting my tumbler into it just to make sure that everything is covered on the inside and the tumbler is adhered. Then you'll see where you want your spider on the tumbler, add a little bit of hot glue, or if you have some epoxy sculpt left, you can epoxy this little spot here and sit the spider on top of it. Let that cure and finish it up with whatever sealer you decide to use. If you use epoxy, I recommend using a paintbrush to brush all the edges and letting that cure before doing a full coat. Then just make sure you have a toothpick on hand so that you can clean out any product that gets in the loops so that your loops stay open. When you've completely sealed it, add the chain back on, and this will be what your finished product looks like.